rhythm things. Hi and welcome to part 3 of my lesson series on the playing of Billy Butler, one of the greatest jazz, R&B, blues guitar players of the 50s and 60s. And in this lesson I'm going to go through some rhythm ideas that I've picked up from listening to Billy Butler play with, especially on the recordings with Bill Doggett in the 50s. And a lot of this stuff I am new to. I'm just learning this stuff myself. Excuse me, so there's a couple places where I'm going to ask for help trying to figure some of these things out. And if any of you guys know this stuff, boy, I would appreciate knowing. I'm going to start out with just some simple things that I've picked up, and maybe not so simple. One is the bass nut runs that you hear him, Billy Butler, use. And I'm going to start out with his most famous bass line of all, which is what he plays on the song Honky Tonk, which is a classic. Now I've heard a lot of guys, and I've met other guitar players who play this in E or in F with a capo, and they play it like this, like an E. Oops, let me slip to the bass notes. Play it something like that. But if you listen to the recording, he's actually playing it in F. And it doesn't sound like he's using a capo. It sounds to me like he is making some mammoth stretches with his left hand. And if you don't have big hands, don't be upset. There's some ways you can get around that, and I found a couple ways. So the Honky Tonk line, let me play it for you one time if you're not familiar with this. It's an instrumental from 1955 or 56. It was really the instrumental that put Bill Doggett and Billy Butler on the map. Great. So the bass line basically goes like this. And then into the song. You have to listen to the song. If you're not familiar with the Honky Tonk, you want to listen to that. Now, the first part of this, basically the same pattern played over 3 different positions. F, which is your 1, B flat, which is your 4, and C, which is your 5. And what I'm doing is staying on the 5th and 6th strings most of the way through, with one exception. So the first part, when I'm playing this F part, that's not too hard. It's a bit of a stretch up here, but I've got my first finger getting the 6th and 5th strings at the 1st fret. My ring finger is on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. That's your basic power chord position. And then I've got my pinky, which is going to go to the 5th fret of the 5th string. The picking pattern is alternating between the 6th and the 5th. So it's 6, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, like that. So that's the first part. And you just take that position, move it all the way up to the 6th fret to the 8th fret. Now you've got a B flat power chord, and the pinky this time is going to go to the 10th fret of the 5th string. Except this time it's going to go 1 extra to the 11th. Now when you do that, it takes a big stretch. And if you can't do it, then you might be better off just using the capo. But if you have big enough hands, you can practice and get the hang of it. But basically what I do is I'm going to take my ring finger off the fret so I can make that stretch. It makes it easier to extend my hand and get the pinky down there to the 11th fret of the 5th string. So the opening part, and then we go back to the 1, and then right here, if you have abnormally large hands or have incredible superpowers and you can stretch from the 1st all the way to the 6th, then good for you. I can't do that. I tried and tried, and I have pretty big hands. And I didn't know how they could possibly play that. So when he goes to the F then, from the B flat back up to the F, this is where the hardest part of this rhythm comes in. And he does this. And rather than stretch the pinky all the way to the 6th fret on the 5th string, which is really, really, really hard to do, I thought that's how he must have done it, and I thought there's something wrong with me that I can't make that stretch that far. But then I was watching a video on YouTube which showed Bill Doggett playing in the, I think it was 1970. The guitar player he had, I don't think it was Billy Butler, but the guitar player he had at that time does it by doing something up here. And what he does this. He's going to go from the 6th string, 1st fret, and get the 1st fret of the 4th string, which is the same as the 6th fret of the 5th string. Same note. So instead of trying to do that stretch, what he does is when he gets ready, he's going to take his ring finger off just for a second, whoops, and then get the 1st and the 3rd string, and then right away put it back on to get the 5th fret of the 5th string, and he has to go right back to that position. I've never done this all the way through playing the song, but that's what I think is going on there. So, like that. And that's something that, if you want to play the song just like that, you'd have to practice. The few times I've played it with a capo and F, just because I couldn't play that. I didn't know how, but now I know I'm going to practice that. And then for the 5, he just goes to the C and does that same walking thing with the pinky, this time from the 12th to the 13th frets of the 5th string. Back to the 1. Then he walks from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd fret on the 5th string, and then into the next verse. Now throughout Honky Tonk, if you listen carefully, he uses that bass rhythm when he's playing. And then in Honky Tonk Part 2, which is the second half of the song, he does some different bass rhythms. And these are real similar to a rhythm that he does, I'm going to show you in a minute, from a song called Rambunctious. And he does this kind of walking rhythm. Something like that. And what he's doing is just taking from the 1st, from the 1, he's got the F, and then he's going to go to the 4th and 5th frets of the 6th string. So it's 1, 2, and then to the 4th, 3rd fret of the 5th string. And that's one way he can do it. The easiest way, I think the way he does it mostly in the song, is bouncing between the 5th fret, 3rd fret of the 5th string, and the 5th fret of the 6th string. It's like this. And then do the same thing on the 5th and the 4th string. Back to the 1. You can mix this up and do lots of different patterns. He goes to the 5, he's going in C, so he starts with the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and then just walks it up here, 6th, 7th frets of the 5th string, 5th fret of the 4th string, 7th fret of the 4th string, back, so back to the 4, 1. So there's some bass rhythm ideas from the song Honky Tonk that Bill Doggett's guitar player Billy Butler uses, which are kind of neat. And you can use those anytime you're backing up a harmonica player or even horns. You need a guitar part to play instead of just playing the same old chords that you hear a lot of guys play. And you can play a cool bass rhythm, especially if you're the only guitar player. Or if you have another guitar player who's playing chords and fills, then you could play the bass parts. The next rhythm I'm going to show you comes from a tune called Rambunctious, and this is a Bill Doggett tune from the 50s, and he plays in G, and he plays a little bass pattern over or behind the organ and the horns that goes like this. I'm just going to play it between the 1 and the 5, in the song there's changes, chord changes, where he plays basically the same pattern over the 4 and the 2 as well. So let me show it to you. That's all he's doing. He just keeps doing that over and over again. He does a couple little variations on it, but nothing tremendous. So what I'm doing is just on the 1, going from the G here to the G on the 4th string at the 5th fret of the 4th string. It's like an octave, so I'm going. And once I do the octave, going to the 7th fret of the 6th string to the 5th fret of the 5th string. And just bouncing back and forth between the 7th fret of the 6th string, 5th fret, 5th string, 5th fret of the 5th string. So the whole lick. Then he's going to 5, just doing the same lick, but this time from the D, which is the 5th fret of the 5th string. So here I'm going, and this is a 2nd position D bar chord in the octave, 7th fret of the 3rd string and 5th fret of the 5th string. You hear that? They're both D, so he's going. And then doing the same thing he did before, but just a few frets up, between the 9th fret of the 5th string and the 7th fret of the 4th string. And then back to the 1. Just like that. And there's another kind of cool bass rhythm idea that you could play behind other instruments if you're looking for things to play. And this is some of the stuff I got from Billy Butler. And every now and then when I play with a horn player, or even a piano player, or sometimes even harmonica, I could break out some of these rhythms and play behind them and have something that's neat to play but won't get in the way of what they're doing. The next rhythm I'm going to show you is one from a tune called Big City Drag, and this is a really neat song. And I'm going to show you kind of a rhythm that's based on the opening to the song. Part of it is what Billy Butler plays, and part of it is me filling in a guitar part for where the horns are, in case you're playing without horns or just want to do this. I just like playing this. This is fun to play. So let me play it through one time, one verse all the way through. It's an F sharp, an odd key, but if you listen to the Bill Doggett recordings, a lot of them are like A flat, F sharp, some weird B flat, weird keys here. That's all the way through. Now in the tune, I hear Billy Butler doing the bass part, the bass line on the guitar. And then the horns are playing the... It's actually a little more complex horn line, but to make it simple, you could do a really cool instrumental based on this. But the guitar, the bass line, here is F sharp, and he's starting it here on the 5. And he's just walking up 4, 5, 6 on the 5th string, and then to the 4th fret of the 4th string, and then back and forth between the 6th fret of the 5th string. So the first part, and that's a typical double stop shuffle lick. If you look at my videos on the guitar of Sonny Boy Williamson, Little Walter, if you don't know this, just, it's pretty simple. If you don't know this one, you need to go back to those videos. But taking the first finger on the 2nd fret, 2nd and 3rd strings, hammering my 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and then flattening my ring finger on the 4th fret, 2nd and 3rd. Just back and forth. And then the second time, he's going to go everything the same, and then finish it up on the 1, which is the 2nd fret of the 6th string. listen real carefully on the recording, he always throws in this little extra F sharp note as he goes through there. And when he goes to the 4, plays that same bass line, but then brings the shuffle, the horns, switch to the, this would be B. Then the guitar comes back in. Then when he goes to the 5, he does this. So he's doing the same lick. And then he goes to the 4th fret and the 2nd fret of the 5th string. And then over the 2 to the 2, open. So that whole thing. Then back to the original lick. And then he goes into the guitar solo, which is pretty awesome, that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So those are some basic kind of rhythm ideas. Now those are all with bass notes, using the bass notes. And next thing I want to get into a little bit is what I've learned about chords from Billy Butler and listening to his playing. And he's got some really cool chord ideas. And so let's just start out and go through these. One thing I really like is how he uses 6th chords. So if we're in G, or let's use A flat, or let's use A. It's an easy key. We can move up and down and around it. One way you can play a A6 is by just making a normal A, F position bar chord. First finger on the 5th fret, 1st and 2nd strings. 2nd finger on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. Ring finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string. Then take the pinky and drop it in on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. That's a 6th thing. And you'll hear in a lot of songs, he'll do this. He'll play a little vamping chord like that behind the organ or the horns or whatever's going on. You'll also hear him slide this. So just like you'd slide a 9th chord, you'll hear him slide the 6th. And he's doing it from 2 steps above. So if you're in A, you're going to slide it from the G6, just have the same chord shape. Watch it a little bit. Slide it down into the chord and back. And then if he's playing in, like, so if you're in G, the 4 is in C. Same thing. Whoops, I was playing an A, so we're going to D. There's a tune called Quaker City. Is it Quaker City? No, not Quaker City. This is also Big City Dragger. What song is that? There's another song where he does the sliding chords. I think it's Ding Dong. It is. It's called Ding Dong. And he does this sliding thing like this. So he slides, and then when he goes back, he does this quick picking, and then ends up on the chord. When he goes to the 4, something like that. Another way you can play the 6th chord is just getting the 3 strings. So making like a D7 shape. If you know your D7th chord, just put that shape over the first position bar chord right there. The first finger for A would be on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. My ring finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret or 7th fret of the 4th string. So when you do that, you don't get the 1st string. But it's the same chord. And there's a couple songs where I listen to Billy Butler's playing where it sounds like he's using a 6th chord like that instead. Now another chord that I hear him using a lot in his playing is from the song. I learned these chords by figuring out the solo for the tune Honky Tonk. And in Honky Tonk, you guys, there's a million videos online that show how to play the solo. And I, in fact, learned part of it off of there. But let's say we're playing an F, and the solo in Honky Tonk, the second verse goes like something like this. And he's doing this chord switch. And what this is a sixth chord. So let's go back to A, and we go down to the 7th or 9th fret with my first finger on the 9th fret of the first string, second finger on the 10th fret of the second string, ring finger on the 11th fret of the third string. So we get this. And that's the same as or. So there's 3 different ways to play a 6th chord. Now what you can do with this, which is really kind of fun, you can pick it, or when you go, you can play that as like a vamping chord. And there's a section in the solo Honky Tonk where he uses that chord, and I'll try to go back and show that to you here in a minute. But then when he goes to the 4 chord, so for an A, the 4 is this shape. And all we're doing is going from the 6th and taking the first finger and moving it down a fret to the 6th fret, keeping the other 2 fingers exactly where they were. And that is a D7. That's a D7th bar. And here's the D7, what I call Bill Dog or Billy Butler type chords. You hear Earl Hooker do this too if you watch my Earl Hooker lesson. A lot of times in Billy Butler's playing, you'll hear him do something like this. Got that choppy beat over that chord. Back into a melody. And so all that is a D7th. And then if you go to the 5, just take that same shape that you had for the D7, slide it up 2, and then your if you do it like I'm doing it, your second finger is on the 12th fret of the second string, ring fingers on the 13th fret of the third string, and my first finger is now on the 10th fret of the first string. So you could do a whole thing. In some different chords, and I'm going to show you an example of how he did that here in just a minute. So those chords are really, he uses them a lot, and there's a tune called Big City Drag where he does this really cool solo using those 6 chords, and I can't play it. I'm working on it now, and I don't want to embarrass myself and play it for you, but I'm going to tab it out for you so you can listen to it on the recording and then see what he's doing using those chords. So he's got the 6th chord played here for an A, and then the 4, which is a 7. So he's using the 6th and these 7th chords. Another way that you hear Billy Butler play the 6 is what I call the jazz 6. And this is another form of that chord, that chord, that chord. So you got lots of different variations of the 6th chord. But sometimes there's couple tunes, I'm trying to think of the one offhand, where he's playing like some vamping chords behind the organ, and he's just playing. Then he goes to what sounds like a 9, or he could be playing a 7. Something like that. So that's shape, if you don't know this one. Got my first finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. My second finger is on the 5th fret, which is the root because we're in A, so this is an A6. And then my ring finger is going to go on the 5th fret of the second string, and my pinky on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. And you kind of mute the open strings in there, the 5th string and the 1st string. You don't really play those when you play that. Something like that. You hear that in some Billy Butler stuff. So those are some chords. an example of how he mixes chords together. This is from a tune, oh, let me see, I've got it tabbed out. It's not Big City Drag. It's not, it's Hammerhead. Hammerhead is an awesome song, and I showed you the solo from Hammerhead on the other lesson. Now in Hammerhead, he's in the key of F, and he does these chord changes that I showed you how to play the solo over earlier. But these are, I picked up some ideas of how to mix these different chords together from listening to this song. And this is one of my favorite Billy Butler, Bill Doggett songs. The song, it's in F, but then it goes to these chord changes. So at one point of the song it goes to the 3, which is the A, and then to the D. This is a D9, so this would be the 4, or the, so it's 3, 6, then to the 2, which is a G, and then to the 5, C7th or C9th. Now in one part the guitar plays a solo over this, and in another part it's the organ or the horns that play. And he does this really cool chord sequence, and I'll try to play it for you. I don't have the backing track to go with it, but let me just try to show you what's going on. And this again is from the tune called Hammerhead. So when he goes to the A, he plays this. And then instead of going to the D here, D9th, he moves the 6th all the way up here to a D6. So instead of going to a D9th here, he's going to the D6th here. And then, before he goes to the next change, which is a G, he does this. And then instead of going to a G, like a G7th, played either way, he goes to a G9, which is really neat. And then, as he gets into the C, he's going to go to a G13. So he just takes his G9, this is a second position G9 chord. First finger is on the 9th fret of the 4th string. Second finger on the 10th fret, the G of the 5th string. And then my ring finger is flattened out at the 10th fret over the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings. And then he goes to a G13th by putting his pinky on the 12th fret of the 1st string. And then from there, he goes to the C7th, which I call the Freddie King or the Earl Hooker chord. And he plays this. And then back in to the 1, back to the F. So let me play that whole sequence for you, and I'll show you that Freddie King chord. Let's do that right now. So in C, here's my C first position bar chord. So I just started right at the top of that on the 8th fret. I've got my pinky on the C, which is at the 8th fret of the 1st string. Quiet, George. I've got my ring finger, cat interfering here. I've got my second finger, ring finger, on the 8th fret of the 4th string. Then I put my pinky at the 5th fret, 1st and 2nd strings. Get out. And then I've got my second finger on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And you get that. So the whole thing goes like this. Back into it. So if you see in that sequence, I'm mixing a 6th, 2 different places, a 9th, a 13th, and a 7th. Little different 7th. So instead of just playing C7th like this, it sounds a lot more trebly and a lot cooler. Like that. I'm going to throw the cat out and I'll be back with the rest of this. Now there are some other Billy Butler chord ideas and things, but to be honest with you, I'm not good enough yet to play those and demonstrate them with any kind of clarity. But hopefully the stuff I showed you gives you some ideas of what you can do with chords and with some of the single string ideas to put a little more jazzy feel into your playing, some bass lines that you can play behind horns or even with other instruments, harmonica, piano. And then also showing you the double stops, which I think are the easiest things that Billy Butler did that you can be creative with and work into your own playing. So this is some of the stuff that I've picked up from listening to Billy Butler, and I am listening even more. I'm really trying to study his stuff. And there's a guy out in California named Tommy Harkenrider who has lessons here on YouTube, and he has a bunch of lessons that he sells. I've actually bought some of those, and those are fantastic. He does a great job of explaining more of the musical ideas behind that playing. And he does a lot of Bill Jennings and some other kind of West Coast and more obscure guitar players that are Renee Hall and Teddy Bunn and some of these guys that really had some cool stuff that most blues players don't know about. And Billy Butler is one that he really likes, and Bill Jennings, those two in particular. But for guys like me who are just blues players most of the time, I can listen to that stuff and pick up some really cool things that I can work into my playing to make it more interesting and a little more sophisticated. Hope you enjoyed these lessons on the playing of Billy Butler and the stuff I shared with you. And I hope that you keep watching my lessons. Those of you who donated, thank you so much. And I will be back next month, and we're going to take a look at the guitar of Jimmy Spruill, another one of the kind of obscure blues R&B guitar players who had a tremendous influence on electric guitar, not just in blues but in rock as well. See you then.